Just a short piece on fitting the MOSS undershields. Under the front wings. I've had them for a year now, just haven't bothered to do it. As I've done all the wax oiling and sealing up under the wheel arches and behind the splash shields that I intend to do, I thought now was the time to fit them on. In the past I've fitted Calmo undershields back in the 80s, and if anybody remembers Calmo undershields, they were very thick, heavy duty plastic, and they were a bit of a pig to fit. I seem to remember it took me 2 to 3 days to fit them, and I certainly remember on one occasion throwing one of them down the driveway because I couldn't get it to sit under the wheel arch properly. But eventually I did get there, and because they were such heavy gauge plastic, you had to drill the inner wings to get them to stay still. It was a bit of a task, but they are a good idea if you're using your vehicle in all weathers, all conditions, all the time. This car isn't going to be living that kind of life. To fit the undershields, I did not take the wheels off. I just jacked up the car at the front to give myself some working space between the wheel and the inner wing. Now, my aim with the shields was not to stop every little bit of moisture from getting under there. I do want to stop the mud and muck getting up to that little shelf at the top of that wing, both sides. That's the key thing. Don't mind a little bit of moisture. There's enough wax oil and dinitrol and other protection in there to keep those front areas reasonably protected. But I did want to stop all that road muck getting up under that wing and sitting there, which is often the cause of the rot in these front areas. So the first thing I did was I pushed the shields under the wheel arch to see how they fitted. I had used plastic weld to weld the little strip along the edge to the edge of the shield, but I wasn't intending to fix that strip to the rim here. I'm not bothered about that. That's not an issue for me. My intention was to push the strip underneath and let it rest on the lip of the arch here. So it's not actually attached to the bodywork, it's just behind it. These shields are so nicely shaped that they sit under there really well, even without any fixings. And that's an important thing with these types of shields. This is the driver's side. You can see the shield is under there, and the most thing is it protects that upper area there where that little shelf is at the top of the wing, and that was the most important thing for me. They're just sitting in there. How have I fixed them in? Well, I attached the lower part of the shield to one of the bolts that holds the splash shield in. I've also attached the back end of the shield to one of the bolts that comes from the coil. That bolt there holds the coil on the other side, so I've just adapted it to hold this shield on this side. I've also attached the shield at the front to one of the bolts that holds the valance on here. Those are the only 3 bolts holding that shield on, and that keeps it nice and firm. That's not going to move. The key thing about attaching it in that fashion is I haven't had to do any drilling into that inner wing where all the electrics are and the brake lines and everything else. And I think that's going to stay on there nice and firm. Just around the edge of the lip, I've put a little piece of rubber around the lip of the shield, right, to give it a bit of extra snugness next to the wing. And I think that's going to stay there. I don't think that's going to move, but I will keep an eye on it as time goes on. So it's not fitted perfectly as MOSS suggests, attached to the wing lip here, but it's sitting under there quite nicely and it should do the job. So on the passenger side again, I've attached the front of the shield to one of the bolts holding the valance on this side. And I've attached a bolt at the other end to one of the bolts that holds the splash shield on at the front. Again, that means I haven't had to do any drilling into the inner wing. And those 2 bolts are the only things holding the shield in on this side. I have trimmed the shield to make sure it's not going to catch anywhere, particularly around the back end where the brake lines are. and it sits quite snugly behind the shock absorber, and that holds it still all on its own. So the whole job took me about 2 hours. 3 fixings holding the shield in place this side, 2 fixings holding the shield in place on the passenger side. The rest of the shield is just being held by its actual preformed shape behind the shock absorbers, and they do sit there quite nicely with that bulge that's in the panelling there. So on normal usage, I think that'll be fine. I will monitor it to make sure it doesn't move. They don't move and there's no problems, but I think that will do the job. And it was very important to me, as I said previously, that I didn't really want to be drilling into these wings. Because these MOSS shields are thin, I don't think there's such a need to drill into the wings, and they will still hold firmly. Obviously time will tell, but hopefully that's the job finished.